What up, Pittsburgh Steel fans? Matty P here with another episode on Steelers Touchdown Under, talking all things rookies, our rookies, the Ravens rookies, ahead of the Week 5 matchup. Steelers go in 2-2, Baltimore Ravens 3-1. Steelers, obviously, as Steel fans, we're hoping the Steelers eke out a win, go top of the AFC North with a victory over the Ravens. That's why we want to talk about the impact of the rookies, because the rookies are going to have a massive impact on this game, and if they don't, it's going to be an issue for the Steelers given the key roles they're going to play in. And also, there's a couple of key rookies to be aware of on the Ravens side. We're not going to do as many as we've done in previous weeks. There's only really 4 that we need to preview just because of their guys that are on IR, some guys that are out, or some guys that aren't playing. So let's crack into it. The first one I want to talk about is Rodney Williams. Really cool to see him make the practice squad. He had a pretty good preseason. I kind of wondered when they released Gentry whether Hayward would be the fourth running back, the fullback, and he'd be a fourth tight end. I didn't think they were going to only go Hayward, Washington, Freeman, just because of the injuries Freeman's had over the last few years, namely concussions. So obviously wasn't predicting that he didn't necessarily have a hamstring injury like he does right now. And we're hoping that he doesn't miss too much time. Love Pat Freeman. But really cool for Rodney Williams. He did a few things in the preseason. He had 1 or 2 touchdowns. Definitely had one of them. And he looked pretty smoother than the team. He's a long guy. Had a bit of experience on the practice squad last year with a couple of teams as well. So really cool. The Steelers have brought him in. Excited for him to be playing. They have bumped him up on the roster as of 24 hours ago to play. That's pretty cool. So I wanted to lead off with him. We don't have any stats we can cover off on him because it would actually be his first game. So even though he came to the league last year, this is his first game. He is technically a rookie, but really excited for Rodney Williams. Moving to Darnell Washington, Steelers, obviously their 3rd round pick. The much, heralded, talked about, 6'7", 270 to 290 pound tight end who's basically like a tackle. Finally got his first reception of the season against Houston for 10 yards. With Freeman out, hopefully they can work him in more. But again, I want to see this run game going. So I'm actually looking to see how well he can help Broderick Jones in Broderick Jones's first start. And we'll transition to talking about Broderick Jones in a moment. That's what's really key for me as well. I'm really interested to see how Darnell can help elevate this team because we need him blocking big against this Ravens team. And it's kind of nice to throw someone back at them when they've got someone like a Patrick Ricard at their fullback who's like almost 300 pounds. It's nice to be able to throw another big weapon back at them. But I would love to see him more of a red zone target, even if it's to distract the defense and to stretch the defense, as I say, in the red zone. All right, we'll now move to Joey Porter Jr. So obviously, Steelers defensive backs are a bit of an issue at the moment. I do think Patrick Peterson's looking a little bit past it. Certainly not necessarily a number 1 anymore. Even if he's not looking completely past it, I don't think he's ready there to be the Steelers number 1. I think I heard a lot of Chris Carter talk this week around Joey Porter Jr. I would love to see Joey Porter Jr. Take a bigger role. I know that a lot of Steel fans that listen to us in subs would know that I wasn't necessarily keen on him at 17 when the Steelers were picking there. Thought it was a steal at 32. Loved it. He's only allowed 2 completions on 6 targets all season. So that's only allowing 33% completion rate for 25 yards. That's a quarterback rating he's allowing right now of 47.2, which is pretty exceptional. He has missed 1 tackle, but he's only had to make 5. So, you sort of take that with a grain of salt to a degree. And also, it's interesting when you look at the air yards. Of the 25 yards he's allowed, 22 of them have been in the air, but the average depth of target has been 12.3 yards. So that means he's an average of 12.3 yards away from the receiver when that goes through, when the pass is made. So that's actually pretty cool. The fact that he's able to completely shut that down, and that's why you've got such a cool or such a low quarterback rating that he's allowing when passes are thrown his way. So that's pretty cool. He continues to contribute on special teams too. So that's one thing you've got to mention with Joey Porter. It's not just the defense that he's contributing on. All right, let's look at Broderick Jones. So Broderick Jones is gearing up for his first start in the NFL. He's only played up until this point 23% of the offensive snaps through the first 4 games. So now we're going to see him play 100%. We're going to have a lot better understanding of what he does, what he doesn't, in terms of how he's adjusted to the NFL, how he's not, where does he got to work on, where is he not. You did see him get it adjusting last week in the game. And I like the sensibility from Kenny Pickett, putting aside whether Kenny Pickett should or shouldn't play this week. That's a completely separate discussion for another video. But I think it's really cool that to hear Kenny be really acknowledging the fact that Broderick Jones is going to have his lumps. He's aware of that. That changes maybe how the pace of how they've got to get the ball out. This is why it's really crucial to have Darnell Washington on that left side, so you kind of get a left tackle plus or a left tackle 1.5. People doing that. That would be really helpful for Broderick Jones, and that will help him adjust as well. So I'd expect to see a lot of run sets where Darnell and Broderick are in there, and even Hayward's wrapping around, and you're creating some lanes there for Najee. Now, even McFarland Jr. with some wraparound, sort of runs to the outside might be really helpful. Not saying, I don't know, it's hard to validate the sweep game because I don't think the Steelers play the sweep game well. But anyway, we'll see from him. I think the biggest thing for Broderick Jones is he's going to give up pressures and he's probably going to give up hurries. But if he can not give up a sack and not get penalized, he will demonstrate that he's worthy of taking that spot from Downmore Jr. So that's what I'd like to see out of Broderick Jones this week. That's kind of his KPI, for you guys out there as Steelers fans. Certainly from my perspective anyway. Other person to talk about, we've got a couple more Steelers to talk about, is Nick Herbig. He had another tackle in this game. So that's pretty cool from his perspective. Didn't play a lot on the defense, only played 17% of snaps. That's a good thing. Again, I'd like to see him mid-season rotate in a little bit more just to give Highsmith and TJ spells, but that is not going to happen when the Steelers are chasing a 24-point differential or a 20-plus differential, even a 15-plus differential. So the Steelers have to put themselves in a position to rest their quality defensive players. They can start doing that, start getting leads. That's going to pay absolute dividends down the stretch. And that's kind of the key, I guess, canary in the coal mine that is Nick Herbig to a degree and his number of snaps. All right, Keanu Benton. So Benton obviously is playing a much bigger role with Hayward out, and that's a good thing for his development. I actually think he should be considered number 2 on the defensive line behind Hayward. And if you're talking about defensive ends, maybe number 3 behind Ogunjobi and Hayward. But I think they've just got to throw in the chips in on him. I think he's good enough. I think he's doing well enough. So excited for him to continue that development against a run-heavy team, and the Ravens continue to show his mettle. I think he's going to have a big game against the Ravens. I can feel it. He had 4 tackles against Houston, 2 solo, 2 assists. So that's pretty good from that perspective. Still only has 1 tackle for loss, 1 quarterback hit on the season, and his 1 sack, which came against the Raiders. But I'm really excited also to see whether bringing Fehoko to the mix allows him to do some pass rush, some interior pass rush, but not necessarily from the nose tackle or defensive tackle position. So that's an exciting thing, I think, for Benton. And I think we've got to start playing up to those strengths because the man is fast, the man is a wrestler, and the man is talented. Let's bring him in and maximize his potential. Then we will move on to Calvin Austin. So Calvin Austin continues to really perform for the Steelers. He had 3 receptions for 5 targets, I should say, for 24 yards, average of 8. Let's catch rate percentage of 60%. He had 1 rush for 5 yards as well. He had basically 29 yards from scrimmage, if you look at that, or 7.3 per touch, which I think is kind of interesting. From the perspective of how many snaps he's playing, I think that's an interesting thing. He's playing 73% of the snaps. Now, people say, well, yeah, he's the number 3 wideout on that roster behind Pickens and Robinson. 73% is pretty big, and it shows that versatility because you can use him in that sweep game. You can use him, and that's just offensive snaps. We know he's playing some of the receiving, doing some receiving stuff as well, but he's only had 18% of special team snaps on the season so far. So really, it's that offense where he's playing to absolute strengths right now, and I think we're just going to see that intensify over the next few weeks. And I think actually he could be a real interesting Swiss Army knife or X factor against the Ravens because they've not really had to deal with anyone like him at the Steelers for quite a long time. So I think that gives them a defensive headache they didn't have before, particularly when you think about then you've got a Darnell Washington who's completely the opposite body size and shape to Calvin Austin. All right, so that wraps up the Steelers rookies. It's going to be a big week for the Steelers rookies. We've got Rodney Williams making his debut for the Steelers. We've got Broderick Jones making his starting debut. I think you'll see more of Porter Jr. Herbig's going to be really important on special teams and maybe some of the sub packages. And then you've obviously got Calvin Austin and what he's going to need to be done and called upon as well. So Steelers rookies definitely. And then we've got Benton, who's going to have to shore up that defensive line, who are getting gashed for rush yardage. So honestly, massive week. Don't don't think we've seen a Steelers rookie class have such an impact on their season's prospects in quite a while. So really excited to see how those boys can go out there and get it done this week, particularly ahead of a bye. They can go out there, play their guts out like they should always, but they can play it out this week, go have a rest, come back, and hopefully take some momentum into the rest of the season. But we do have a couple of Ravens rookies I want to talk about. One is the much talked about, and a lot of Steeler fans wanted him in the draft in the second round or further on. He was drafted in the third round, but is Clemson's Trenton Simpson, who was an inside linebacker with outside ability to play outside. A lot of people love the athleticism, but one of the big knock on him coming out of college was that he was a bit slow to make decisions at linebacker, and that has a real problem for a defense, and I think that was going to be a real problem if he played for the Steelers. He's barely played. Now, in fairness, he's behind Patrick Queen and he's behind Roquan Smith, so that also changes it a little bit as well because, he's got some of the most talented linebackers in the league that he's sitting behind, and that's a good thing for them. That means he's learning. That's not a good thing for the rest of the AFC North. But he's only played 6 snaps on the season so far defensively. That's 2%. The rest, he's played 79 snaps on special teams, which is 69% of special team snaps in the games played so far by the Ravens. So no real other stats on tackles or anything to talk about because he's only played 6 snaps. But be aware of him because this is the sort of game where they could look to sort of scheme him in. Again, sub-package for them is where he could be involved. The next guy that I want to talk about from their side of things is the 6'6", 265-pound, number 95 from the Baltimore Ravens, Tavius Robinson. He was taken in the 4th round. Not something that was fully on my draft radar, being really honest. He played out at Mississippi, played out his final year at Mississippi. I think it was, or he definitely had some time at Mississippi, yeah. But he has started to play a lot more. So he had 1 tackle to start the season in the first game. He had 4 tackles in the next game. And then he had, 3 tackles in the next game. Then he had 4 tackles last week. He didn't play in the first game. He had 1 tackle in the second game of the season, 3 in the second game of the season, third game of the season, and 4 in the 4th game of the season. But you're seeing him slowly do more and more and get more snaps. And basically, he's now played 40% of the defensive snaps on the season so far. He's played 50% of the special team snaps. But you're starting to see Tavius Robinson play. Now, I know there's a number of different injuries on the Ravens, right now. So that's probably not a surprise to anyone. But he's not necessarily a name that you've heard of before because he was a draft rookie. He was drafted in the 4th round, and he's not someone that I'm super familiar with. And a lot of people, our subs will know, I love the draft process. So he's averaging 2 tackles per game right now that he's played in. So he's definitely someone to take note of there. He has already had a tackle for a loss. And this could be the game he looks to make a breakout splash play, or they look to use him because there's not much tape on him. So just be aware of number 95 from the Ravens, Tavius Robinson. The next guy on our list, the second last guy that we're going to talk about from the Ravens, was an undrafted guy, Jeremiah Moon, out of Florida. Now, Jeremiah is also not someone that's seen a stack ton of time. He played in the opening game, and then he played again last week. But last week, he only played on special teams. Actually, no, it has him there as 45% of the defensive snaps so far. But he's only got... that's because Perfect References stuff their numbers up. That's right. So he has 5 tackles on the season so far combined. He's allowed 1 completion on 1 target when they've thrown his way. And he has a rating of 79.2. He plays the linebacker for the Ravens. I should have said that up front. So interesting kind of perspective from what he's done. But yeah, he played all those tackles actually came in the Indiana game as well. So that's something to keep in mind. But he then played, that's right. He then played special teams against Cleveland. And so basically you might see him more likely to see him on special teams contribute, but don't be surprised to see number 48 for the Ravens contribute in things like sub package or things like close to the end of halves, etc. And then finally, we will talk about their zippy wide receiver. I really actually was kind of hoping to bring him to the Steelers, but with Calvin Austin, I don't think it made a stack of sense. And that is Zay Flowers. Zay Flowers has his worst catch rate on the season so far was 75% last weekend against Cleveland, where he caught 3 from 4. Otherwise, it's 8 out of 10 against Indiana. It's 4 from 5 against Cincinnati. It's 9 from 10 against their win against Houston in week 1. He has over 244 yards on the season from 24 receptions. That's an average of 10.2 yards. So it's pretty cool. His catch percentage is average now 82.8%. He's also had 5 attempts at rushing for 11 yards, so not as much there. He's not punting or kick returning, so that's fair enough. He's played 88% of the offensive snaps this year for the Ravens so far, only 1 special team snap, but that's pretty crazy. That basically means that he's like a top 2 wide receiver for them. And I actually think he will be one of their, he could arguably be their top wide receiver by the end of the season. He's a zippy guy, very similar to a Jamar Chase more than a Calvin Austin, but very zippy guy, very fast, plays with an attitude. Kind of sucks to see him in our division with someone else because he was a great receiver out at Boston College and just absolutely floored some people, had a really good draft process. So, yeah, excited to see how the Steelers defense go against him. He could cause headaches for our older DBs. So definitely be aware of number 4 for the Ravens. He's going to create some nightmare matchups and problems. It's just crazy. He's 5'10" and 272 pounds. It's nuts. But yeah, very zippy, very fast. The Steelers need to shut him down early. And it's why I think you'll see a lot of sub package from the Steelers, even though they're playing a run team, because they need speed here. And it also kind of worries me with Neal. I'm keen for them to just lock Joey Porter on him. Just man up on Joey Porter, man up on Zay Flowers, because some people might say, is Porter fast enough? I don't think anyone else is fast enough in that Steelers defense to keep up with him. So let's go with a young guy, I reckon. But with that, hope you enjoyed this preview of the Steelers rookies and the Ravens rookies. As always, go Steelers. We'll also have a episode of TDU out in the next sort of 24, 48 hours for you as well. So excited to bring you that. But yeah, go Steelers. Hope they can get the win against the Baltimore Ravens this week.